The clinking of wine glasses and the soft murmur of strangers formed the soundtrack to his quiet dread. It was a sound Ethan had come to know well. The sound of another blind date. This one, set up by his well-meaning but relentless sister, was at a painfully trendy bar, all exposed brick and soft. Golden light that did nothing to warm the chill of routine in his chest. He arrived first, a tactical choice. It allowed him to secure a corner booth, to survey the terrain, to prepare the persona pleasant. Available Ethan, a man who was friendly, engaged, and safely guarded. Then she walked in, and the script, the one he'd rehearsed in his mind for 100 first meetings, crumbled into dust. She wasn't just beautiful. She was a resonance. Her name was Clara, his sister had said. She moved through the room with a quiet grace that seemed to still the air around her, her dark eyes scanning the tables before landing on him. A small, tentative smile touched her lips as she approached. Ethan. Her voice was softer than he'd imagined, a melody that tugged at a chord deep within him. A chord he'd thought long since rusted over. "Clara, it's great to meet you," he said, rising, the practiced line feeling hollow on his tongue. The first 20 minutes were unnervingly perfect. The conversation flowed effortlessly, a rare and precious alchemy on these staged evenings. They laughed about their mutual friend, his sister, and debated the merits of classic films versus modern cinema. She was witty, sharp, and her gaze held his with an intensity that felt familiar. It was the kind of connection people wrote songs about, the kind he'd stopped believing in years ago. But it was the little things that began to unnerve him. She didn't ask what he did for a living. She already knew he was an architect. She nodded in understanding when he mentioned his irrational hatred for the sound of polystyrene, as if she'd filed that fact away long ago. And when the waiter brought their drinks, she glanced at his whiskey neat and said, still taking it straight, "I see." Ethan froze, the glass halfway to his lips. A cold trickle of unease traced his spine. "I'm sorry." A faint blush colored her cheeks. "Oh, just a guess. You seem like a whiskey-straight kind of guy." The ease of the evening began to curdle into a low-grade paranoia. Was this some elaborate setup? Had his sister given her a detailed dossier? He watched her, the way her fingers curled around her wine glass, a specific tilt of her head when she was listening, the tiny, almost invisible scar just above her left eyebrow. A bizarre, impossible sense of déjà vu washed over him, so strong it was dizzying. He decided to confront it, to lance the boil of this strange tension. Setting his glass down, he leaned forward, his voice dropping to a more intimate, slightly strained tone. "This is going to sound insane, Clara, but have we met before?" The moment the words left his mouth, the air between them shifted. The easy warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by a profound and ancient sorrow. The smile on her lips became a fragile, heartbreaking thing. She looked down at her hands, then back up at him. And the directness of her gaze was like a physical blow. "You don't remember me, do you?" She whispered. The world seemed to slow, the noise of the bar fading into a distant hum. That wasn't the response he'd expected. He'd expected a laugh, a denial, a coquettish, maybe. Not this. This raw, undisguised pain. "Remember you?" He stammered, his mind racing, scrambling through years of memories, faces, parties. Old classes, nothing. She was a ghost, with no origin. I don't think so. I'm sure I would remember." A single, silent tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. She didn't bother to wipe it away. "I was starting to believe you'd just forgotten. But I see now, it's not that. It never occurred to me that you never knew me at all." "What are you talking about?" Ethan's heart was hammering against his ribs, frantic drumbeat of confusion and a dawning, inexplicable fear. "7 years ago," she began, her voice trembling but clear. "St. Jude's Hospital. You were in the room next to my brother, Leo." The name Leo hit him with the force of a sledgehammer. A flood of fragmented, painful memories surged forth. The sterile white halls, the smell of antiseptic, the relentless beeping of monitors. The boy in the next bed, pale and small, fighting a battle he would ultimately lose. Leo. He remembered Leo's bright eyes, their shared love for a sci-fi comic, The way they'd talked for hours to distract themselves from the grim reality of the oncology ward. And he remembered Leo's sister, the quiet girl who visited every day after school, the girl who would sit by her brother's bed, reading to him, her voice a steady, comforting presence. He'd mostly seen the top of her head, bent over a book. He'd heard her voice, a soft murmur through the curtain that sometimes separated the rooms. He'd been so consumed by his own fear, his own fight for survival, that she had been a peripheral figure, a shadow in the landscape of his illness. "You," he breathed, the word barely audible. The face of the grieving girl superimposed itself over the beautiful, composed woman before him. The pieces clicked into a devastating mosaic. "You're Leo's sister? For 6 months, Ethan, I sat 5 feet from you. I listened to you make my brother laugh when he was in too much pain to even smile. I heard you tell him stories about the world outside. You gave him courage. Our tears fell freely now. And you gave it to me too. You were this bright, brave light in the darkest time of my life. I used to listen to your voice and think, if he can fight so hard, so can Leo, so can I. I fell in love with the sound of your voice through a hospital curtain." Ethan felt the breath leave his body. He was back there, in that sterile room, feeling the ache in his own remissed body, remembering the shadow of the girl he'd never truly seen. "After you both were discharged, Leo didn't make it. I was lost, and the only person I felt would understand was you. I found your sister online, through a mutual post about your recovery. I messaged her. I told her I was a friend from the hospital, that I hoped you were well." A cold, sickening understanding began to dawn on Ethan. "My sister. She never told me." "She replied," Clara said, her voice cracking. "She was so sweet. She said you were recovering, but that the trauma had been severe. She said you had memory gaps, that you didn't like to talk about that time, and it was better not to bring up people from the hospital. She asked me to respect your need to move on." The twist of the knife was exquisite. His sister, in her fierce, clumsy protectiveness, shielded him from a ghost, not realizing she was severing the one tether that made sense of his survival. "So I let you go," Clara whispered. "I grieved for my brother, and I quietly, secretly grieved for you. For years, I built a life, but I never forgot. When your sister, not recognizing my name after all this time, set us up on this date, I thought it was a sign, a miracle. I thought, maybe he does remember. Maybe he feels it too." She looked at him, her eyes searching his, seeing only the blank, horrified shock. She saw the utter lack of recognition for what she truly was, not a stranger, but a cornerstone of his own past. "But you don't," she said, the finality in her voice shattering the last of his composure. "You look at me and I'm just another blind date." She stood up, her movements slow and heavy with a grief 7 years in the making. She left a $20 bill on the table for her untouched wine. "I'm sorry," Ethan choked out, his own eyes burning. He was apologizing for his sister, for his illness, for his faulty memory, for the cosmic cruelty of it all. He was apologizing for not loving the shadow that had loved him. Clara gave him one last, long look, a look filled with a love that had survived death and silence, only to be annihilated by a blank slate. "Tell your sister it didn't work out," she said softly. "And be well, Ethan." And then she was gone, walking out of the bar and taking with her the haunting, tragic echo of a love story he had never known was his. He was left alone in the warm, buzzing light. The ghost of a girl he never saw finally made flesh, only to disappear forever, leaving him alone with the devastating weight of a memory he never had. Q.